Oh, okay. All right, so Mr. Darby is a part of the audit committee?
Mr. Sass is.
Okay, Mr.
No,
Okay.
he's not up here.
All right. Oh, Mr. Swears is, though. Is Mr. Swears here?
He said he was in the restroom.
I'm gonna give him a minute because he was on that committee. Reverend, I'm gonna give Mr. Swears a minute because he was on your committee.
It's Mr. Sass.
Oh, Mr. Sass, I'm sorry, the audit, Mr. Sass. So we'll give Mr. Swears a few minutes. Okay, here he is, Mr. Swears. So now we're going to start our audit committee. Mr. Sass is the chairman, the members are Reverend Middleton, Brantley Moody, and Dickie Swears. So I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Sass. Mr. Sass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Approval of the minutes of January 28th, 2021. Are there any additions, comments?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Number 2, external auditors report for fiscal year 2021. Ms. Samantha Salisbury.
Hello.
Company. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Salisbury. I'm here to go over the external audit report. I'm a manager at Scott and Company, and like I said, we do the financial statement audit. You have a packet of information that's included to go over today. There is a comprehensive annual financial report, a single audit reporting package, and some required communication letters included in that packet. The largest report that you have there is what we like to call the CAFR. It's this blue report. I'm going to try to keep this as brief and as efficient as possible. I know you guys have a lot of things going on today. I'm going to focus mostly on the opinions that we did, the work that we did, and not so much focus on financial data, just because it's we're talking about for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. This blue CAFR report represents the financial activity for the reporting year of June 30th, 2021. This report contains financial data that represents the county as a whole. It also breaks down governmental activities and business type activities, and this report also further breaks down financial data by funds, activities, and departmental information. And because this is a CAFR, it also includes additional summary information, letters and reports prior to getting to the financial data, as well as supplemental financial information that supports that data, and historical data that represents up to 10 years of information on the county's activities and financial information. If I were going to tell you where to focus on this report, spend time and your energy looking at it to get some ideas and get a better understanding, it would be to look through the MD&A. This is the most summarized information. It has some comparisons to last year, and it starts on page 22. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the financial information, but that is the most comprehensive area in that report to get information and the figures that are reported in this statement. First and foremost, this report is the responsibility of your management. It's prepared by your staff, and it's not just your finance and budget, but all the departments that run through the county. This is the collective representation of the financial information. We perform the audit and we provide opinion onto whether or not this information is materially correct. And as a matter of fact, the only documentation in this blue report is our opinion that comes from us, that has been done by us. Everything else has been done by your staff and your employees. On this, it does say that our opinion is what we would consider a clean opinion, which means that the information on there, the financial information and the supporting documentations, is materially correct. It is the highest level that you can get, is this clean, unqualified opinion. This opinion is based on assurances that are provided based on testing procedures that we do on the information that is presented to us by management and the assertions that they make in association with that financial information. Users can use this, and in our opinion, helps provide comfort that the information that they're looking at is consistent, materially correct, and they can make their own decisions about the county and the comfort they have relying on this information in those decisions.
Excuse me,
County
what page
has-
is that?
Excuse me?
Where's your opinion page?
Sure. That's true, I forgot, there is a lot of information in this report. Our opinion, 19.
Thank you.
The county has received the certificate of achievement on this report, and they have done so for 33 years in a row. Your budget department has an equivalent certificate they've received for 32 years in a row. I'd just like to mention, this is not an easy task. This is not something that's just handed out by the GFOA. It shows your commitment from you and your staff to maintain a standard of excellence in financial reporting. In total, the county receives 3 separate reports from us. The report that's included in this CAFR is one of those opinions, but we also have 2 other opinions and reports that are included in what we call the single audit reporting packet. That is other bound statement. As recipients of federal funding, it is required that any entity that receives over $750,000 of federal funds would be subject to single audit testing. This is done in conjunction with the financial statement audit and has some additional procedures, and the main focus of it is to have testing and compliance on the federal expenditures and federal awards as they relate to the grant agreements. And we specifically test what would be considered major funds, so we don't test all of the federal expenditures, but those that we would consider a major fund. The report on the single audit states that we had no issues or findings based on our testing for single audit requirements. In that packet, that report can be found on page 10. And again, that's just the formal report. But again, that was a clean opinion on the federal expenditures and the major programs related to those. There's a second report included in this packet, and that is a report that is based on testing performed on internal controls over financial reporting. So this is going back to financial reporting, separate from the single audit federal expenditures. The second report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance can be found on page, sorry, just give me 1 second. Oh, it's before it. So that's on page 6. I don't think it has a 6 on it, so it's between 5 and 7. This report has 3 levels of reporting documentation. One is no findings, 1 level is significant deficiencies, and the final level is material weakness. We had 1 finding that we would consider a significant deficiency. That is something that is much less severe than a material weakness. It is an item that, if not corrected, could result in material misstatements of the financial information. This finding can be found on page 11. I believe 11 is the summary, where it's documented that there's a finding. If you can see in that first paragraph, the summary separates between what's considered compliance and testing on financial statements, and then what's compliance and testing on single audit federal awards. So that one line that says there's a significant deficiency, the middle saying yes, that's where it's documented, and then the actual finding is on page 12. As part of having a finding, the department is allowed to provide their response and their planned corrective action plan. That is also included on page 12. And that is as of February 18th, 2022. And I'll just read it real quick. It says the finding is considered a year-end cutoff procedures. So it was noted that certain revenues received into the Register of Deeds office was not processed in a manner that allowed proper recording of the revenues for the full accrual reporting requirements under GASB 34. So fund reporting, you take a 60-day collection period after year end, and those funds are included in the revenues of the fund for the reporting year. And on the government-wide, the large financial statements, you do it on a full accrual basis. The effect is that there's a possibility of future material misstatements of revenue if not corrected. The reviews of the responsible official and planned corrective action is that management has reviewed the recommendation and will make proper adjustments. The issue has resulted in an office backlog. There is currently no more backlog. The mailing records at the Register of Deeds are now within their 30-day mandate, and these concerns have been addressed. This response is allowed to be included in the financial statements. We don't do any follow-up on response, but as external auditors, traditionally in a year after, you do have to follow up and do additional procedures in the next reporting year to determine where they are with their response and their action plan. The final thing I wanted to go over, we have a letter that is dated February 18th, a separate letter. This is required communication. This was brought into effect to basically assure that everything that we're going over, any information that you guys might find relevant, is written and communicated. And so the easiest thing for external auditors to do is to go ahead and write this out in a letter and include it in the presentation. Most of this information I've already discussed and gone over. There is certain additional information, such as that we didn't have any issues or difficulties performing the audit. We didn't find a need to go to other auditors to get a second opinion about situations, and that we've had no major issues with the management or the staff in the performance of our audit. Last but not least, I do want to thank everybody in the finance department of the county, all the employees and officials that help us get this audit done every year. Specifically, I want to thank Corinne, Carla, Lori, Mac, all the people in their departments that help us get the information to support what we need and allow us to do our testing. These people are valuable members. They bring their experience and knowledge, and we could not get this audit done in time without their help. We have an audit team of about 7 staff members, part of a mid-sized firm, and we provide direct support working on this audit to try to get it done either on-site or in our office in Columbia. Our planning starts, every year we perform the audit, our planning starts mid-July. We start doing procedures and spending time most of the fall through the winter to be able to get this out by the end of the year and to the GFOA as a complete audit. It is a big commitment to everybody that's involved, and I'm very honored to be a part of it, and I appreciate you allowing us to perform the audit. That is all I have, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Salisbury. Any of the members have any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Middleton?
Yes, thank you very much, and good evening, and thank you again, Ms. Salisbury, for the wonderful work that you do, and I enjoyed working with you very closely last year, and certainly, just wanted to ask relative to the deficiency, the significant deficiencies identified, from which category of auditing, internally, I guess, this is external, would this then become an issue that is raised in the actual budget document for the county? I know that some of these, sort of deficiencies are not new, maybe, and so why did it not appear last year and now appearing this year?
So the assertion that we are addressing in the significant deficiency is what we consider cutoff procedures, which is the ability to estimate and record transactions, in this case revenues, in the proper reporting period. And again, we're looking at what we would consider an event that could potentially cause a material misstatement in the financial statements. So that department has received an enormous increase in revenues and activity that's gone through. And because of that, it caused an issue that if we couldn't correct, that we wouldn't be able to estimate the collections after year end that were associated with activities prior to year end.
So again, similarly, they had an increased number of revenues the year prior, and that did not make it as a deficiency, even contemplating what the additional revenues could be. It didn't make it even as it related to a cutoff procedures deficiency last year. So why, I guess my larger question is, why this year? Because it seems like they've had the same, the issue
Sure.
is not different.
So a lot of auditing and experience is based on risk and assessments. We do a lot of analytical procedures to determine which areas. We also work with internal audit as far as reading reports and determining whether or not those reports would cause us to perform additional procedures. In this year specifically, there was a pretty large increase in comparison to the budget, comparison to prior year. And so in further trying to support the revenue that is being presented to us as the revenue of the department, it caused us to have to test that revenue to ensure all proper recording.
Lastly, if I may, there are other departments that have also had, in my opinion, just reading other internal audit reports, significant deficiencies. They may not have been of the proportion based on the revenue stream, so why are those not also included?
I would say that based on that there were procedures in the audit performed that we were able to feel comfortable with the change in comparison, and there was no additional risk based on our audit procedures for additional testing to be done.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
And I would like to point out this audit was from July 1st, 2020 through through June 30th, 2021. So it ended nearly a year ago.
Correct.
8 or 9 months ago, that period. Thank you. Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Sass. Thank you, Ms. Salisbury. And thank you to Mr. Tootin and Ms. Altenheim for a clean sheet, as they say. That's pretty impressive. Ms. Altenheim, as I want to do, I have a lot of tabs. I'll get with you on those later. Fund accounting was never my strong suit. Ms. Salisbury, questions in the notes. On page 81 in particular, there's a category called credit risk. And you mentioned the county has no formal policy relating to credit risk of investments. My question to you is that fairly standard? I don't know that I'm alarmed by it,
Yes.
but is that standard? And if not, are there industry or comparably sized counties who may have a credit risk policy that we could maybe, instead of recreating the wheel, take a look at theirs and create one?
I would say that it's common. Generally speaking, a couple of things. I would say, number one, anytime you create a policy, that policy is then subject to the audit testing. So you want to make sure if you create a policy that it's.
You can pass it.
You can pass your own policy. And based on my experience, I would say that currently the investments that are done by the county are pretty standard and would be considered probably one of the safest
Very low
investments.
risk, okay. Just a couple more quick questions in the note on the debt service. I'm always after Ms. Altenheim, and she is very great about staying on top of our refundings. And one of the questions I had for her that I'd like to hear you address in the notes is the interest rates on all these different issues we have. I understand the county receives premiums over the face amount of these bonds, which reduces the interest rate risk. Why is it not presented in the financial statements as the all-in rate with those premiums calculated in? As a reader of this, I might look and say, boy, those rates are a little bit high. I know the all-in rate we're paying is not, but why would we not, as an accounting industry, include those notes about that?
I would say the most consistent and best response to that is that is not the governmental reporting standard requirement.
Fair enough. Okay. My final question is this, on page 104, the fund balance about the retirement pension plans. I just am so afraid that someday is going to hammer ratings because of that. And I thought that was going away, or was certainly not disregarded, but was sort of disregarded maybe. Can you speak to that at all?
So your county maintains a internal service fund that in the fund financial statements represents activity as a standalone for which is recording all of this state liability in one place. So that a lot of counties don't have it reported that way as an internal service fund. So the only place that you would see that kind of liability would be on the government-wide governmental activities. So with that being said, I don't think it's as much of an issue showing it that way, because internal service funds in their nature being a business, in the proprietary business type activities section, it's a liability that's not often shown on the financial statements.
Okay. Would it be more like a contingent liability, maybe one that we never expect to pay, or is it?
So an internal service fund is representing that activities. Okay, let me see if I can figure out a better way to say
I'm sorry to
this.
get in the weeds with you, but
It's okay. The state liability, although it's being required to be reported on the financial statements, is not being required to be funded with current activities. So having it in the fund financial statements, it's causing a large deficiency and a large liability that isn't expected to be funded using current operations.
Understood. Thank you. Final question to build off what Reverend Middleton was discussing. The material issue we had, if not corrected, that could affect your firm's ability to give a clean report in future years. Is that correct?
Correct. So we have a significant deficiency, which is lower than a material weakness. The material weakness would cause us to, with some concern on being able to determine under the full accrual financial statement report whether or not that revenue is properly stated.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sass.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions?
I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Salisbury. I appreciate it. Ms. Altenheim, everyone, I sure appreciate the work that y'all have done on this. I know it's a long task that y'all take up during the year, and we really appreciate it. It shows shows the work and dedication that y'all put forward for Charleston County, and we sure appreciate it. Thank y'all.
So now we're going to move to our Human Resources Committee, where Councilman Werman is the chair. Mr. Werman, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Pryor. Again, this is the the Human Resources Committee. Members of the committee are myself as chair, Councilwoman Honeycutt, Councilman Moody, Councilman Schwiers, and then, of course, Chairman Pryor. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of January 13th, 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the second item on the agenda is the administrator's semi-annual evaluation. I understand we have need for an executive session to discuss this, it being a personnel matter. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
I don't get to,
I'll second it. Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we shall
Motion passes.
adjourn to executive session and shall return shortly. Hopefully, this will be 5 minutes, no more than 10.
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you. My mama smacked me upside the head if I didn't help the lady. I don't know why.
All right. Are we reconvened here? Mr. Chairman? All right, I think we are back in session. The administrator's evaluation was finalized, and no action or votes were taken. Having completed that, I believe that ends our Human Resources Committee meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Werman. So now we move to our Planning and Public Works Committee. Mr. Darby is the chair. Mr. Darby, I'm gonna turn this over to you at this time, sir.
I'm gonna give it back to Mr. Weirman and ask him to run this meeting for me, sir.
Okay, Mr. Werman, he wants you to run this meeting for him.
Are you serious, Mr.
Yes, sir,
Chairman?
I am, sir. Very good. I'm very serious, sir.
Very well.
What a surprise, huh, Rob?
This is a surprise, but always a happy surprise. This is our Planning and Public Works Committee meeting. All members of council are members of the committee. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of January 27th.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None opposed. Motion, or approval passes. Next item on the agenda is a presentation by Rational Roads regarding Main Road Segment C. I believe we have some materials to review here.
Mr. Werman, if you would let them know they have up to 15 minutes.
Very good. I believe we will have a 15-minute presentation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is John Zlogar, and thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. With Rational Roads, which is a grassroots organization, I just wanted to introduce some of the other folks that are here. Alexis Stobel, Kate Nevin, Judy Jenkins, and Robin Dias. They're all part of the steering committee. So with that, we'll start off, see if we can get this going. Let's see here. So this is about Main Road Corridor, Rational Roads, and what we call Alternative 6. So first of all, we'd like to thank what y'all are doing with regards to the Segment A up there on the left. See if I can get this going here. Segment A up on the left. In terms of the flyover, pretty much when that came out, everybody loved it. That really is the biggest issue on the island right now. Even though it's not on the island, it really is the biggest issue. And then subsequent to that, you came out with Segment C, which has 5 alternatives associated with it. And that didn't get as good a reception, and there were multiple reasons for that. And one, people immediately asked the question, well, why aren't we doing Segment B? Because there's a lot of issues on Segment B. And also, we looked at it, and it was a 5-lane road pretty much the entire way, all the options, and it took out a lot of trees, houses, a lot of right-of-way. It seemed like there were a lot of issues with that from the standpoint of how, if you will, destructive it was on the island. So based upon that, a bunch of us got together and started talking about it, and we formed Rational Routes, and we did a lot of public engagement. We realized we didn't know all the answers. We needed to go and talk to people. So as you can see, all the different places we've gone to, and as a matter of fact, if you're around Betsy Carrison on Saturday from 9 to noon, we're at Rosebank Farms, and we've got 2 other ones coming up in the next couple of weeks after that. So we really believe we need to do a lot of engagement. We also realized that we needed to engage with you all. We've talked with some of you. We've talked with folks at the city, people at the state level. So we're really trying to understand all the issues associated with the roads here. And the other thing is we also realized we are not traffic engineers. So we went out and raised some funds and hired 2 well-respected transportation engineers to help us look at the data and come up with concepts. And one of the key things here is, yes, we're from Johns Island, and that does not mean we're against everything. I know there's somewhat of a concept that that's what Johns Island is all about. It's not. We're not saying no here. We definitely want this accomplished, but we realize that there's better alternatives, and that's what we looked at. So rather than no, we're saying yes, there's better ways. And so when we went about developing this alternative, one of the things is we talked about extensive community input, but we also did what we call boots on the ground here. We looked at what the real issues were. Just kind of give you an idea. In the upper left there, any Chamber of Commerce would love to have that picture to put on their cover, right? This is what Bohica Road is. This is what it looks like. And then you've got issues like the upper right there. That is actually the bike ped path from St. John's High School to Maybank area. I mean, just look at that. And so the alternative that were provided by the county don't even address this, even though it's in the main road corridor. This happens to be on the main road. These are the type of things you really do need to address that. Lower left is Marianne Point, known locally as Dead Man's Curve. It's known that because it is the deadliest stretch of road on Johns Island. And again, the 5 alternatives do not address that. And then finally, just to kind of give you an idea of the boots on the ground, the right picture, if you can see it, that is a bike ped path to Hot Gap High School, or middle school rather. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a ditch here. There is a plank going across the ditch so students can walk across that plank, crawl into this fence, and come to school. So, we looked at that and said, this is actually a transportation problem, because part of the issue is that all the kids that aren't doing that are having their parents drive them to school. So we looked at this very holistically. It's not a matter of it's just a matter of widening a road. It's trying to figure out where people are going to and why they're going there. So one of the things we didn't constrain it to a 5-lane highway. We realized there are different approaches that could be taken. And we included improving safety in the purpose and need. Believe it or not, from day one, we've been amazed that improving safety is not in the stated purpose and need. It is in Highway 41. It is for the Riverland Park, Central Park, purpose and need, but it's not in this purpose and need. And we think if you actually put safety as part of the purpose and need, you'll have a different result. As we mentioned before, there's a lot of issues on Main Road. We think that should be included in this overall effort. And as part of this, we weren't just saying, hey, we're a bunch of folks and we think there's some problems. We really looked at the data. We went to BCD-COG, we went to SCDOT, we had to use some FOIA to get some data. And what we found out is that, lo and behold, the congestion is not on the long straightaways, it's at the intersections. And we all know that. We know that when it's rush hour, you're stuck behind a light, you're stuck for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights. That's where the issues are. Same way if you look at the data on safety, the collision data and the fatalities, where are they? They're not in the straightaways. They're in the curves and the intersections. So what we've really come up, and the other thing is we looked at data, there's really no congestion south of Edenvale Road through 2045, and that's the county's timeline for this project. So what you find out is the real issues are not the arbitrary segmentation of A and B, but the real issues are between Marianne Point and Edenvale Road. That's where the worst safety and congestion issues are, today and tomorrow. The other areas, north and south of that, especially the straightaways, have some minor issues, but not to the extent that the issues are between those 2 points. By the way, I do better if you ask me questions, so ask me questions. The other thing is we realized we needed to do a modern context-based design approach. And so what does that mean? Oh, I think the best way to find that out is to look at the SCDOT latest roadway design manual. It's I think it's about an 800-page document. And in chapter 2 of that document, not chapter 27, in chapter 2 of that document, it talks about designing roads that are integrated with the community, in harmony with the natural and social environment, and reflect community values. Sounds pretty good. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about here. And it also says you can design roads that are narrower, have narrower lane widths. You don't have to design really large roads. You can reduce operating speeds. You can have turnouts for traffic and use roundabouts. Again, the approach that we've taken, and quite frankly, we found this document after we developed Alternative 6 and then realized, without knowing it, we were doing exactly what SCDOT says you should do. So the other thing is we looked at in terms of developing priorities. Certainly priorities are, safety and congestion and so forth, but you have to put that in context. And so we looked at it, there are really 3 priorities we're thinking about that we believe we all should have. One is school safety and access, as we talked about a little bit before. The other is we think the Maybank intersection should be a rural town center. It shouldn't be just a crossroads of highways that forever is lost to the island. It should be a rural town center. And the other thing, finally, there's a neighborhood on Bohicket between Edenvale and Hebron Zion Church. We believe that the whole neighborhood should be enhanced. Rather than talking about how it have the least amount of destruction, we believe it should be enhanced.
What does that mean?
So what is Alternative 6? Well, as we said, it's an upgrade of all of Main and Bohicket roads, and it uses a pretty extensive toolkit. What you see on the right is an eye chart. It's the type of stuff we want you to realize, and we'll show some more details later on. I want you to realize we've actually looked at this down to the street level in terms of what needs to be accomplished. But rather than just a toolkit of a 5-lane road, we've looked at it from the standpoint of roundabouts, left-hand turns, turnouts, networks of roads, selective road widenings, signage, speed calming. In other words, we're looking at it very holistically. But I did want to just touch on that network of roads. So it's a way of getting traffic to disperse. And as you see over there on the right, there's a diagram which is a great network of road. If you're coming from the upper left, you're coming on island from Limehouse. And if you want to go to Wadmalaw Island, what do? You don't go to Maybank Highway, right? You don't go through that intersection and add to the congestion. You simply make a right at Brownswood and you're on your way. That's the type of thing we're talking about with networks of roads. That said, we fully realize that some of these may be, close to neighborhoods. And so anything that we're proposing here relative to network of roads, we realize that need to be fully vetted with the community. So what does it achieve, Alternative 6? Fundamentally, relieves current and future congestion. Our consultants have looked at it. They're confident that the future congestion the county is looking at through 2045 is met. It improves safety. Like I said, we believe that should be part of the purpose and need. It's less destructive. Why is it less destructive? You're not taking what was a 2-lane road and making it into a 5-lane road for huge stretches of distance when it's not really needed. I mean, if you think about a 2-lane road in the width of that right-of-way, and now make it 5 lanes and add a bike ped path, you're taking a lot of property. It enhances our community, so that's what we're talking about. We're not just talking about not destroying things, but actually enhance it, such as that neighborhood I was referring to, as well as the Maybank intersection. And, it can cost less. And I think nowadays with, I just read an article about the $1 trillion infrastructure package and how the dollars are not going to go as far because of inflation. It can cost less because rather than saying you must build a 5-lane road from here to here, we've got lots of strategic changes. And at the end of the day, you only have a certain amount of budget. You can look at it, you can prioritize and say, okay, Maybank intersection has to be done, Chisholm has to be done, but when we get down here, you can say, okay, we've run out of money, we don't need to do that. That all said, the 2016 half-cent sales tax does have the funds in there for all of the main road corridor. That's all of Maybank, all of Main and all of Bohicket roads. And it can also be implemented quicker. And this is going to be really important because when segment A is done, there's going to be a fire hose of cars coming down, not waiting for 4 or 5 stoplights, coming down now Main Road, and they're going to hit Maybank intersection. That intersection has got to be fixed before segment A, the flyover is done. And so we need to do this quickly. And it can be done quicker because you're not trying to do an entire stretch of 5, 6, 7 miles of road at 5 lanes. You're trying to put a roundabout here, a turn lane there, a turn lane out someplace else. It's really more amenable to being done quicker and within budget. So some details, and I've got a bunch of details, and if I start running out of time, somebody give me a yell, because I don't want to go over too many of these, but you have it in your package. But let me give you an example here. We're looking at this entire segment here, and each part of this entire corridor, each part of this has its own issues. It's not like there's one thing that has to be accomplished. And just as a high-level look at it, issues here are left-hand turns. Then you get into the deadly curve at Marianne Point. You get into all the issues of school access. You keep on moving, and you get to this whole congested town center. You have school access again down here. Another deadly curve. Here's a neighborhood you've got to go through, and more left turn delays. So again, lots of different things, and we're looking at it very strategically, what needs to be done where to accomplish the objectives as well as enhance the community. And we don't believe the 5-lane road really does address all these issues. So just I'll go through these real quickly. So again, all we're talking about up here is some left turn lanes and some select turnouts. Get to Marianne Point, and by the way, those crosses there, those pictures of crosses are not stock photos from Google. Those are actually pictures on the side of the road. And by the way, if you get out to take those pictures like I did, you can really feel how that traffic is going by you. Mm-hmm. And so here, we're talking about putting a roundabout at Marianne Point. What that does, it announces the curve. And that's one of the big issues, and that's what the SCDOT talked about, is announcing that transition. It announces the curve. There's a new almost 400 house development going there. We believe the entrance to that should be at that roundabout. That makes perfectly good sense. All those 400 cars, 400 houses, 800 cars, 1,000 cars that are going to come out of there. Best to do it at a place like a roundabout. And then bike ped paths. I'm sure somebody will be glad to hear that. And reduce speeds. Chisholm to Brownswood. That whole area is schools, right? St. John's High School and Angel Oak. If you ever go there, and I live on Chisholm Road, getting out on Chisholm Road is very difficult, very dangerous. Making a left into it is very difficult and very dangerous. And as we showed before, in that same stretch, walking to school is even more dangerous because you don't have a car to protect you. So what we're talking about there is, if you see in the kind of lower, all the way in the bottom is a blow up of a roundabout. Talking about moving it away from those trees. We don't want to take out those trees. Moving it away from Chisholm Road and into, actually, that's county property there. And we've been told that there's one building that we might have to worry about, and that building's already been scheduled for demolition, so it's not destroying anything there. But also things like a network of road. And here's part of that network we've been talking about. That dashed line up there, you see up this direction. All the traffic on Brownswood, all those people that have to take their kids from all those developments that drop them off at Angel Oak, and I do see all those cars, they have to go down to Main Road and add to the Main Road traffic. Why do that if you can have a road, a network of a road that allows you simply go to that circle, that roundabout, and go directly to the school and use that on the return trip? And to give you an idea of the way we're looking at this.
Mr. Slogar,
Yes.
I think we are running fairly close to the 15-minute mark
Okay.
here. I did want to pause just quickly. We've maybe got 2 or 3 minutes left based on my sort of unofficial count here. Do we have any questions from council members? Otherwise, I'd be happy to let Mr. Slogar sort of use that time as he deems proper, but I just want to make sure we don't have unanswered questions when this is over. Okay. Mr. Slogar, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
So that was just an idea, that kind of gave you an idea of all the different sections. And so I think the key thing is next steps, right? You see what we're talking about? We're talking about putting roundabouts where they're needed. We're talking about putting network roads where they're needed, putting turnouts where they're needed, putting left-hand turn lanes where they're needed. That can be done cheaper and quicker as needed because of the flyover coming. So for us, the next steps are really to go back and look at the purpose and need, really look at what we're doing there. We think it needs to be modified to include all of Main and Bohicket roads. We think that improving safety needs to be included in it. Context-based designs, you know, do what the SCDOT says about the road as part of the community. That needs to be included. We need to minimize, the community, the impacts to the community, the environment, obviously. And we also need to make sure that we improve connectivity to the community. And all of this is within the scope of the 2016 sales tax. I mean, we've got a, this is in your package in terms of the current purpose need is on the left. On the right is, it's not a lot of changes, but they're significant in terms of what the outcome could be. So with that in mind, are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Slogar. Any questions from council?
Yes.
Lights
Have
back
y'all
on, thanks.
been engaging the community to see what the community thinks about this? Because obviously it's going to be intrusive to some, not all. And, getting around the Brownswood, Brownswood has been, I think, overdeveloped, but heavily developed. So have y'all been engaging the communities and, come back to us with some, some feedback?
So, yes. Yes, sir. Like I said, we've had over 10 community meetings. We've got one scheduled for Saturday and two more later in March. We've had 3 webinars. We've sent out 2 surveys. We have a newsletter with about 700 people on the newsletter. We have a website. We have a Facebook page. So we're doing everything we can to try to go out there and engage people. We've gone to churches, to farmers markets, to breweries. We're doing whatever we can to try to engage them and get their feedback.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Honeycutt?
Just a couple questions. You said you raised funds to hire these transportation engineers. Where did those funds come from?
We went out and solicited funds from the community.
Individuals? Are there
Yes,
any groups that back Rational Roads?
No.
Okay.
All the funds came from the community. We did not have anybody supply funds.
Okay. And then does this, I know you said all the way down the Edenvale, does this include addressing, you call it the connectivity roads, widening plow ground?
Well, from if you look at the data, and I actually met with someone from Kiowa the other day relative to analyzing the data and looking at the data says you don't need to widen plow ground road.
Okay. I would love to see the data. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know what our
Well,
transportation department's doing.
It's
but-
not, it's, just so you know, it's not our data, it's SCDOT and BCD COG data.
Okay.
And I'll be glad to send you the stuff I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Councilman Schwiers?
I'm actually very, very encouraged by this. I'm impressed by the community involvement. I'm impressed by the suggested solutions. I've been on county council for 16 years now, and I always dreaded the day that we were going to have to deal with Bohicket Road, because I wasn't sure what a solution could be. I had a feeling I knew what this solution was going to be, and I didn't think I could vote for that. But I see a lot of proposals here that I can actually support. So I would love to see this. I would love to see the details there, but I'm very encouraged that perhaps there is something I can support on improving traffic flow in that area.
Thank you.
I think Councilman Moody was, okay.
Lights turned up.
Councilman Middleton?
Similarly, just along with Mr. Swears, I'm very impressed with the momentum, the synergy, and the active involvement of the community. I've been engaged with some of these processes just to remain curious as to how they could actually pull it off. And certainly looking at the updated purpose and need to include safety, I think that's something that most people would want in a road project. And so I applaud the Rational Roads group and the people of Johns Island for coming together with something that's sensible, smart, and it seems like it would even save some money.
Very good. Councilman Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Slogar, thank you. Very impressive presentation. I can't help but feel that if this was a time saver and a money saver, our staff would be all over it. I look forward to hearing their comments later, but I have to think that with this network of roads, going across wetlands, I think this would be budgetary concerns. Mr. Armstrong, I'll look forward to hearing from you guys. Mr. Zoglar, I would like to continue on Councilwoman Honeycutt's questions. Rick Hall, who's the other name I saw? Simons.
Norm Marshall.
How much do their reports cost, if you don't mind sharing with me?
We've spent to date about $50,000.
And that you passed the hat and raised that much money?
We did.
Okay.
We've had multiple places. We've met with people, we've had donors.
I think this has got the fingerprints of the Coastal Conservation League on it. And that's my concern with this. That's it. And you don't have to say anything if you don't want to, but that's my concern. Because every time, their only intention is to stop the Interstate 526. That's it. And hoard money and pay their attorneys. So I think this has got their fingerprints all over it. And I love the participation from the crowd. I love your passion, but I think you're being used. So that's just my feeling on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Address that?
Yes.
Do you mind?
You know, I love Johns Island, and I think that we can all agree that there are conservationists, there are developers, and there's citizens, and there's farmers, and there's business owners. And I am here to tell you, I back this group 100% because everybody's voice is included, okay? And so I agree, you might have some conservationists, but our whole group, we have made a point to say 526 is not an issue. There are people that back 526, and there are people that are definitely against it. And we, as an island of people, as a group of people, we decided not to make that an issue. Do you know why? Because it becomes about you guys and not about us, okay? I have a neighbor that lived on Bohicket Road when it was a dirt road, okay? I have neighbors who your alternatives are taking, not their house, but majority of their yards. I'm here for them. So I really would like it if we try not to make it about the conservationists or about the developers. Let's make it about the people, okay? There are people, my neighbors, Betty Jean, she doesn't have $50,000, okay? But maybe it is the person on Bohicket Road that lives on the river that's saying, hey, I'll write that check. It doesn't matter. We're here saying, listen, there are issues. We need to deal with it. I'm not against developers. In fact, I would love if some developers did a beautiful job with Maybank Highway because it looks like a patchwork of nonsense, okay? I'm not against developers, but I will refuse for you to just flippantly just chalk this up as a conservationist. It is not.
Could you state your name for the record?
Alexis Strobel.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for your comments. I disagree. So
And you
thank
may disagree.
Thank you. I do. So I know this group.
No, you don't. Like, how do you?
Thank you, ma'am.
can't say stuff like that.
Moody, that's-
You can't flippantly say that. You're saying I'm a conservationist.
Ms.
can
Strobel,
too.
thank you for your comments, Ms. Strobel. Okay, Mr. Wimmer, going back, I think Mr. Darby had something to say.
Well,
Darby?
I would just, no offense to,
Put your mic down, Mr. Darby.
no offense to Councilman Moody, but in defense of the league, sir, they do good things, Mr. Moody. And just to brand them as they're just anti, or you would not go with this because they are anti-526. Where is, no offense, sir, where's the objectivity? Did we look at?
Can I answer that?
Well, yes, sir, please, sir.
If I could.
Moody.
Thank you, sir.
Could
When the
I?
Greenbelt project concluded, and I know we're getting off topic.
Yes.
They were presented with an opportunity to spend a few bucks and help the PSD create some green space. They chose not to. They have $15 million on their balance sheet in cash and investments.
Mr. Chair,
PSD would have been a drop in the bucket.
I
okay?
call
And
for
when they're
the,
done with
I
them,
call for the
they'll be-
order of
move
the
on
day
to-
because none of this seems to make any sense.
Thank you.
I call for
Thank-
the order of the day. Let's get back to whatever presentation.
Yes,
that we-
thank you, Councilman Middleton. Mr. Zlogar, I'll give you a few moments to conclude. I don't think there's any other, oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Councilman,
yes, yes.
Councilman.
Thank you so much. Yes. First, I'd like to say that we certainly welcome community input. That's what we would like to see. I saw the presentation from this group at least one time, well, twice, I think, twice. And I think that there are some of the things that are shown here in reference to Marianne Point Road and Chisholm Road that has been brought to the attention of our transportation staff, and I thought they were looking at including some of those changes along with the 800 comments that I heard was presented. So someone from transportation, if you could just, Mr. Thigpen, let me know, am I right with that?
Yes, ma'am. The department's met with Raffle Road on several occasions at their request. We are currently analyzing the proposal that they put forward, and hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have some results of that we can share with them on does it meet the purpose and need. Then we'll, if it does, then we would move it along and keep looking at it as we look at the other options that are on the table and taking it through the NEPA process.
Okay, so you do have 5 other alternatives, and some of these ideas were comments that you also got from the Rational Roads group and other community comments that you are incorporating in your presentation to us next time?
Yes, ma'am. We took all of those comments that were submitted as part of the public input process, and we're looking at those and we continue to look at them as we move forward.
And has this been vetted completely with the SCDOT regulations? Y'all haven't done that yet?
Any ideas for DOT that I'm aware of?
Should we be concerned about that?
We've worked with Rational Roads, we have refined the alternatives to meet standards, and I think we went through each and every one of their ideas, what we could look at. And I think you were on the call with that, the meeting, and said this, we can do this, we can't do this, and we agreed upon what we would model and see if, we will take it forward as part of the NEPA process as every other alternative.
So that'll come back to us later. Around when are we gonna see that?
So we were trying to schedule a meeting with you and Chairman Pryor and Rational Roads to go over the results of our findings.
I mean, you ready next week?
Yes, ma'am, we're
Okay.
ready whenever y'all are.
Mr. Breyer? I'm ready.
Very good.
We need to look at all of it. We need to look at all, so we can see.
Hold on a minute. If you're going to make that presentation, I think full council ought to see it. Let's everybody see it all at the same time. I don't want anybody to think that me and Ms. Johnson have special privileges, so we have nothing to hide. So when you get that presentation, if it's available next week, I'm gonna see if I can fit it into the schedule on the agenda. And then you can make that presentation to all of us at one time. So that way 9 people will have the same thing at the same time. It won't be 9 different versions.
Just for alternative 6 or for all the alternatives?
Well, what you just told Ms. Johnson you had to present to her, I would like you to present it to all of council at the same time. And that creates less confusion. All right? So let's see if I can get that fit in the agenda for next week. And then everybody will hear it and see it at the same time.
Very good. I think Councilman Sass has the concluding questions or comments here, and then I will give Mr. Zlogar a little
'cause we
time
gotta move it along.
to conclude everything, and then we will have to move on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Zlogar. Y'all's group has done a lot of great work. I appreciate what you've done. And having been through the Highway 41 process, I'm happy to see there's a lot of citizen involvement and that, all this information is going to work together. And I think we'll end up with a better product. So I know our people have done a lot of work. I know y'all have done a lot of work. Maybe all this stuff will work out well. Thank you very much.
Your chairman wants to say something. Chairman of this committee.
No, I was just gonna say why the chairman of the whole body is gonna say rush on. This is a very pertinent subject. Not to go back and forth with Mr. Moody because he definitely, has his opinion, and everybody's an expert in his or her opinion, but I hope that we would side on the line of objectivity. I don't know this young lady, but I feel her passion because the league has done some great things, particularly when it comes down to certain communities which cannot defend themselves, and they were right on time to assist. But just the idea, I think whether it's the developers or whether it's the league, I just hope that we would side on that which is best for the community, Mr. Moody, whatever that may be, sir. Because I know you are a man of intelligence, you are a man of prestige and a man of objectivity. So before we go out like that, so I just hope that we look at all ends. So that's all I ask, Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Councilman Darby.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Zlogar, would you like to have a few concluding words? We do
Yes,
need to.
just real quickly, two things. One is, we decided early on not to take any position whatsoever in 526 because it was divisive, as we see here, and because Main Road and Bohicket roads need to be fixed regardless of 526. So it's not either or. This is not, let's do this or this. 520, Main Road and Bohicket Road need to be fixed, independent of everything else. And the second thing is the purpose and need. One of the issues here is staff's going to come back against the current purpose and needs and evaluate it. They're not going to evaluate it for safety. They're not going to evaluate it for context-based designs. They're not going to evaluate it to say, hey, we want to make sure that intersection at Maybank and Main and Bohicket fits within the community. Those aren't the criteria. So they're going to evaluate it against the stated purpose and need from the technical side. The reason, and we've been talking to them quite a bit on the technical side, the reason we're here today is not the technical side. It's the political side, i.e. the purpose and need that basically the county council has approved. What we're basically saying is we would recommend that you relook at that purpose and need so the evaluation criteria is more in line with what the community wants. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Zlogar, and thank you to everyone who put a lot of work into this, quite obviously. So obviously a lot to think about, and I certainly look forward to hearing what staff has, but I certainly also understand the context that you just put it in there, Mr. Zlogar. With that being said, I'm going to turn this back over to Chairman Pryor. That concludes the Planning and Public Works Committee meeting, February 24th.
Thank you, Mr. Werman.
Oh, by the way, sir, thank you, Mr. Werman. You did a great job, sir. So I just told him.
We're going to allow them to leave. And, okay, we are going to move item number 1. This is our Finance Committee agenda, where all members of council gets to participate. I am the chairman. Item 1, approval of minutes of January 27, 22.
So moved, both
and
items.
February, both. Is there a second?
Second.
Any deletions, additions, or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, ayes have it. We now move to a presentation and introduction of our consultant. We're going to turn that over. Go right ahead, sir.
Right, well,
Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Good evening, council. Tonight, well, you're all aware that you have hired consultants to help us.
Let me make sure they're on. Hold on. Let me make sure. Yeah. You can talk while they bring them up, because I'm sure they can hear you.
All right, well, as you all know, you authorized the hiring of consultants to help our newly established department create a housing plan for the county. And it is my distinct pleasure to finally introduce you to those consultants, which is Urban Strategies. They have been working diligently with our department in a robust community engagement process. We have been in touch with every sector of Charleston County population. I have been very impressed with their very skillful navigation of our very diverse population in allowing people to express what they need, what they need to be expressed, and also keeping the conversation moving towards productive solutions. So I think you all will also be impressed with the work that they are doing and will submit. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Urban Strategies.
Okay, urban strategist, go right ahead.
Great, Daryl. Thank you for that introduction, and good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Carney, and with me tonight is Miriam Keller, and we're very excited to be able to connect with you tonight in advance of our trip next week to see you all. This presentation really is just a quick connection, a quick introduction to us as the planning team, as well as the Housing Our Future initiative. So we're going to spend a few minutes doing that and then answering any questions you might have. If there's one thing that we have heard loud and clear over the last couple of months through conversations with Christine and Daryl and everyone else, it's that while this Housing Our Future initiative may be a new initiative for the county, the topic of housing is not new to Charleston County. And sorry, we've kind of lost the presentation here. There we go. The topic of housing is not new to Charleston County. One thing our experience tells us in all of our conversations with elected officials and staff, developers, advocates, even large employers, tells us that housing really does impact everything in our lives and in our communities. Quality, stable, affordable housing supports family and childhood health. There's studies out there that show a direct correlation between stable housing and K through 12 educational attainment. We think of housing as a wealth building, endeavor also, from a personal side and a household side, where you might be talking about financial security and intergenerational wealth, to the community side, and where you might think of wealth building in a kind of a non-traditional way, but thinking about it as economic development. And all of these pieces come together and touch some facet of housing and touch some facet of our lives. And it's for that reason that we see, Charleston County really embracing the need for a strategy to align these perspectives in an action plan. And that's what Housing Our Future initiative and us as a planning team are here to do. Just a quick snapshot of who we are. Development Strategies is a full-service planning firm. We've been headquartered in St. Louis for over 30 years. We have a national footprint, a national portfolio of experience, including down here in the Southeast and in the Carolinas, where we are tackling issues of housing and community development, land use and growth, economic development and equity in a variety of contexts. Our planning partner is the Boudreaux Group. They are a South Carolina, a Columbia-based planning and design firm, and we have partnered with them for them to provide us with very strategic input and insight into messaging, community engagement, and to really ensure that the local context permeates this strategic plan. And so that's it for us in a nutshell. I'm going to turn it over to Miriam to talk about the initiative.
Yeah, great. So now we'd like to give you just a quick overview of the process as we envision it and the approach to engagement that Mr. Davis referenced. So the process is built around 5 phases, and we're very early in this effort still. And there are key milestones and points of engagement at each phase, as you can see. In these first 2 phases, we're very quickly working to absorb all the important work that's been done to date by others in the community and quantifying housing needs, because we know, like Justin said, housing has been a pressing conversation in Charleston County for some time. And so we're making sure to build on all of that understanding rather than reinvent the wheel. The 3rd and 4th phases are focused on the strategic framework. So, those specific actions that can be taken to address the issue. And the final phase focus more deeply on implementation. The schedule is designed to make sure that, should you on council choose to proceed with a referendum to raise public funds for housing, there will be a clear strategic framework in place by July that illustrates the specific use of those public funds and how they align with other policies and private investments. So at the highest level, we understand this process to be focused on 2 questions. So the first, defining, housing, the specific housing that is needed to meet the full spectrum of the community's needs. So from those with the lowest incomes to workforce and market rate segments in the community and on up, and the specific strategies to address those challenges and meet those needs. And quickly, what we mean by that, as you all know, there's a huge need for quality, affordable housing in the county. we'll be quantifying what that need is by unit type and by price point, and focusing on what the specific gaps are to meet that need. So, that is how do policy, zoning, incentives, public investment, and regional coordination all fit together into the puzzle alongside existing tools and also, private investment. And, we understand that this is a complex and multifaceted issue. So it touches on resilience, transportation, racial equity, of course, and many other challenges and questions. So all this highlights the complexity of the challenge and also the importance of partnership and coordination, which leads to kind of the second really important question: how in this process will we engage the community in a way that earns trust, raises awareness, and builds public confidence in the approach that we arrive at through this process. And because we know that Charleston County is a very complex place and a cookie cutter approach will not work. There are many diverse places, diverse experiences, and diverse housing needs in the community, and the strategy needs to fully reflect that. And so the engagement approach at a high level here is designed to make sure that the strategy acknowledges that complexity, like I said. So we'll have guidance from the steering committee. You all are appointing a municipal leaders group, which will help us better understand the realities in each of the jurisdictions in the county, and also understand the potential for greater regional and interjurisdictional collaboration. And we'll have several ways of involving the broader community. So workshops, open houses, surveys, listening sessions, videos, and more. And last, but certainly not least, that broad array of stakeholders that Mr. Davis was mentioning, we need to capture their local expertise and grassroots perspectives of these people who confront the issue every day in their work. And so we've begun doing that. We've had 8 roundtables so far with these stakeholders already, with over 60 participants from all sorts of perspectives. So you can see here advocacy, finance, economic development, just a really great participation so far in these roundtables. We've touched on many themes already: density, transit, homeownership, and these were just the very first conversations of many, many more opportunities for these stakeholders, the community, many others to participate throughout the process.
So you can imagine we're consolidating a 12-month process into about a 7-minute presentation. So we have kind of hit this at a high level, and this is really the first time that you will engage with us out of many times, and hopefully we'll be talking to some of you next week when we're in town. We will be in town next week doing a tour of the county and talking with staff and continuing to build our understanding of the local context. We understand that you all are seating a steering committee with an appointment process now, and concurrent with that is also the development of a project website. And so hopefully our second trip, the steering committee and the website will all be coming together when we after next week's trip, and those are kind of the immediate next steps with everything. And I'm happy to Miriam and I to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Mr. Moody, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Justin and Miriam, this is Brantley Moody. I look forward to meeting you next Friday. One question I've got, and maybe I'm skipping ahead, is you touched on the multiple overlapping municipalities. Is what I'd like to hear from you next Friday is how do we not step on each other's toes? That we're working in areas where the city of Charleston or North Charleston aren't, that we're talking and working together, that we're not overlapping, I guess, that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. So I'll look forward to visiting with you next Friday and discussing that. Mr. Davis, just had a question. I don't know if we'd had any people make application for the steering committee, maybe too early yet, but has there been any activity at all?
Yes. I think they're going directly to the clerk, but I have gotten I've been CC'd on a few of them, so I think she could probably.
Received several applications.
Social media went out today.
Okay.
So the public knows now that this is a process?
Yes, sir. It's been noticed on our website as we typically do. I believe Kelsey sent out a press release. We've done social media engagement as well.
And the number we're looking for is 13?
13 people.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Anybody else before we move on? Okay,
Well, no, I do want to ask, the contractor said that he's going to be here next week for how long? How many days?
For 3 days, correct?
So are we setting up appointments for any of the council members? I heard Mr. Moody is meeting on Friday.
Yes, I thought those notices went out to everybody.
And we sent an email out in the past week or so asking for y'all
think I sent mine.
to set up meetings with us.
But we'll make that happen.
yeah, get with Mr. Davis and Ms. Johnson, since you're the chair of that committee, and they'll make that happen. Anybody else, if you want an appointment, so they can stagger your appointments, so you won't bum rush everybody at the same time, but if 2 people want to go in at the same meeting, that's, you can do that. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much. Mr. Davis, anything else from you before we let them go?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing y'all on next week if the Lord delay is coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now we move to item 3, which is 3A, B, and C, and
Mr.
D. We're
Chairman.
gonna take A, yes, sir?
On item 3A, I'd ask we defer that until March 10th Finance Committee meeting. That will give us enough time to let the public comment period that ends on March 4th. That'll allow us a week, our staff, to compile all the data and comments and heat maps and all that stuff.
All right, I'm gonna ask staff, are y'all comfortable with doing that? I mean, would it slow y'all up? I know this money is out there, and I think you have a certain amount of time for grant money, so who on staff wants to answer that question? Would it be feasible to the 10th, will that delay y'all any, or y'all need to move forward tonight?
Sir, we can work with that. I mean, it'll give us enough time to get the application submitted. The applications are due April the 14th, I believe. That will give us enough time to finish the process.
All right, so is there any objection to moving this to?
I was seconding that motion.
So, I think you just asking for deferral. Is that comfortable with everybody?
Question is, if we defer it, what would that do? Certainly, when you come back after the deferral period, we're going to then say, based on comments or the lack thereof, what exactly would the deferred period?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Well, Reverend Middleton, I've made no bones about what I think about public meetings. These comment things, they're influenced by advocacy groups, but I think if you're going to run the deal, you ought to run the deal. To cut a public comment period off a week early is tantamount to saying, I don't give a rip what you think. We're going to go forward with this application. So I think we ought to defer it and let's see if you're going to run the sham meetings, see what the results are. That's my point. Is don't cut it off early because you're just saying we don't care what you think. We're going ahead anyway.
I just got,
Mr. Milton, you finished? Reverend?
I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. Yes, I'm finished. Yes.
All right, Mr. Darby?
Mr. Moody, we all right tonight, sir? I mean,
I'm feeling great, man.
What's a sham meeting?
Mr. Darby, when you go to these public meetings, and you've got to have them, they're nothing but advocacy groups come in. Not common folk, to use your word, common folk don't participate. They don't. They just don't come out. But I think I know what the results are going to be with this, and I think I'm generally fine with this project. But to cut off public comments, as ridiculous as I think they are, because of how they're weighted, is just tantamount to saying we don't care what you think.
So why was this placed on the agenda for tonight?
It's my question.
That's why you asked
Staff?
for
That's
extension.
why I asked for it to be deferred.
The more time we have to prepare an application, the more time we have to make it a very thorough, thought out process. More time we have to collect data. The better product we can put forward in a grant application, the more chances we have of being successful.
So what you're saying is y'all just asking for permission to start the grant process, but y'all not gonna close out the public comments process?
No, sir. We will provide, we do for every public meeting, we'll provide you the public comment summary which will tell you how everyone, opinions matter, some of how they answer some of our very specific questions. But no, we will not, we will still accept the comments through the forum.
Yeah, okay. All right, so Mr. Moody, that might answer your question. Then we'll stop comments. Mr. Wellman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I'm concerned by that last report that I don't want to do anything that is going to jeopardize our ability to actually get the grant. I mean, I guess my question is, does this go to a full council afterwards?
Yes, go to council on Tuesday.
Would we, how much of the public comment period would be left between now and Tuesday?
2 days.
2 days?
March 4th is when it closes, and they need, and I'm proposing a week.
March 3rd or 4th, so you don't, yeah, well. I mean, the staff is asking us to put authority to start the application process. You know, I don't want to hinder them if it's just going to hinder us from getting money. That's my take on it. I know, I talked to Mr. Moody about that before, and if it's going to hinder us from, you know, from getting funds, you know, we still can do two at one time. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We still can do the application and still take comments, because it's only going to be 2 or 3 days difference.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve.
Well, he had a motion on the floor, and I think Mr. Sass seconded.
Oh, did he?
So if you want to move forward with staff recommendation, then you can vote against the motion.
I got you.
Okay, so that's the motion. Is there anybody else? Ms. Salisbury, would you call the roll?
Mr. Darby? Nay. Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Nay.
Mr. Middleton? Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Warman?
Nay.
Mr. Pryor?
Nay.
Motion fails 4-5.
All right, now you have a motion.
Yes, I was about to jump right in. Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, if we're gonna move forward with it, then I do have questions. From the agenda item that I read, it sounds like the grant would be a maximum of $25 million. But the project could be easily $50 million. Okay, so by agreeing that we apply for this grant, I guess in a way we're also saying it's worth $25 million to us to build this bike and pedestrian bridge. I mean, I find it hard to believe that the council is going to say, yeah, we were successful, we got the grant, but we're not going to do the project. You know, so in a way, to me, this is kind of a default vote to support the project. And the numbers were very troubling to me. I mean, this is, I guess the high end was 60 million.
Yeah. I think that's the high end was 60 million, but I think what staff was recommending was around about 32 million. If you saw what staff, they had three alternatives. There was one that was just one exit, and then one with 2 exits, and then the high end you're talking about. And I think the majority of the folks, staff was going to recommend doing, I think, the 32 million or whatever the cost is. But Mr. Rodenbach, you there? Can you explain to us what's going on? You know, if they got a question, the pricing. Steve, you can give us the pricing. Somebody.
Mr. Pryor, we have not picked an option. We still have to go through the NEPA process. And so we don't know which option we'll eventually end up with. So we're not prepared to.
But the pricing, and I'm saying there were 3 prices, right?
I believe that's correct.
Right, one was the high 60s, and I think, you know, in meeting with the different participants, the mayor of North Charleston, the mayor of the city of Charleston, and the Carter stakeholders, I think they were leaning toward, I think it's A or B, I think it was B, which was to have an exit to come out in Dorchester Terrace, and then one come out at the old Baker site.
Mr. Pryor, I'm not, I don't want to violate the NEPA process, so I'm not.
No, I'm not asking you to pick. I'm just asking you what I saw and what other people saw.
I think what you're referring to is correct. Those were options that were presented.
And then my thing is, how do you put a price on somebody's life? I mean, we've had so many people killed walking across that bridge. We did everything we can to avoid that. We've tell them you can ride the bus free. They put up their little stakes in the middle to keep them from going, and they're doing it anyway. So, I mean, if we're serious about saving lives, or we're serious about, you know, coming from West Ashley to North Charleston, just like they did with the Cooper River Bridge, well, the Ravenel Bridge, then the longer we wait, the more it's gonna cost. And so, if this council has to decide what price do we put on a life? And reading some of the comments that's already on there, it's kind of sickening when you hear people say, well, I don't want people from North Charleston coming over to West Actually because they're gonna bring crime over there, they're gonna break in your house. I mean, to me, that's ridiculous. That's the same thing they said about the Isle of Palm connector when they built it. They don't mind bringing in trash, or they don't mind bringing in traffic to North Charleston, but they don't want North Charleston coming to West Ashley, which is absurd to me. So what price do we put on a life?
That's really an unfair comparison. You know, people tell me that I could die driving my truck, yet I drove here today. I mean, there are risks you take in life and you choose to take. But beyond that, this is a very long bridge. This is a very long bike and pedestrian path. This is not a cheap ordeal. I generally support bike and pedestrian paths, but this is huge. This is a very long expanse, a very high bridge, and therefore very expensive.
It's not gonna be on the bridge, Mr. Swears. It's going under the bridge.
Under the bridge?
Yes, it's not going on the side of the bridge. It's gonna go around under the bridge, as far as I understand. So if somebody tell you they're gonna build it on the side of the bridge,
It's
that's.
gonna block the marine traffic?
No, it's not gonna block the marine traffic. I think you ought to look at it
Then how's
first.
it going across the river?
I think you ought to look, I don't think it goes all the way across the river. It goes around the side of it, Mr. Swears.
It's gotta go over it.
Right, so it goes up, it's a bridge. Doesn't go under the bridge, it goes up, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
But
It-
I
go ahead.
still have
Yeah, I'm sorry.
the
Yep,
floor.
yes, sir.
So, very expensive. If we were building a new bridge, I'd be the first to say we need to put bike and pedestrian. If it was attachable to this bridge, that would bring the cost down. I'd be all for that too. You know, some things you want them badly, but it's just not financially the right thing to do. I'm teeter-tottering on this one, but I'm not seeing a project that I think is financially feasible. You can say, but it's federal money. I pay federal taxes, so that's my money. There are some that say it's federal money. It's as if it's free. It's not free. It's our money. So I even question, again, based on the distance, how much use will this thing actually see? Somebody mentioned the Isle of Palms connector.
They use it.
I drive across there. I never see many people on it, although it has now been restriped for bike and pedestrian. So if you build it, they will come. I don't know about that. I'm just not so sure about that. And it would be terribly, terribly disappointing if we build it and they don't come. So I have a real issue with this kind of money on a project that I don't think will necessarily even be successful if it is built.
Anybody else? Mr. Sass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. I know you mentioned the mayor, the mayors. Are other people going to be involved in funding this besides Charleston County Council? And the grant?
Staff?
Mr. Sass, at this point in time, we have not identified a match for the grant, and we don't know if we will have to have a match for the grant. There are some grants that don't require a match. We don't know which option we're choosing, so we don't have a total dollar figure in it. But we would obviously accept any support from any municipalities that would come forward and offer some funds to help the county pay for the project. And of course, county council would have to approve any funds that we would use from sales tax.
A couple more questions. It appears that we would have, if the grant's $25 million and the lowest, I think the lowest expense was 30. So I mean, there would be some expense Charleston County or somebody would have to come up in addition to the grant. Who's going to pay for the maintenance and all that kind of stuff? And who owns that bridge? Who's in charge of it? Who gets stuck with fixing it and taking care of it?
Those are all things to work out through the process. We have 2 municipalities that could take responsibility for maintenance of the bridge. We have the DOT that could take it on.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the DOT will do the limehouse, right? So during the process, we're building a separate bridge across the Stono as part of the 17 in Main project, and the DOT has agreed to maintain that bridge going forward. So we've been successful in getting others to maintain it in the past.
And that bridge will have pedestrian, which it should. It's a brand-new project being built, and it should have bike and pedestrian access. I agree with Mr. Schreers, when we build a bridge.
For the Limehouse Bridge, it is a separate standalone pedestrian bridge. It's not attached to the other bridge. We've investigated that, and the structural capacity of the existing Limehouse Bridge would not allow us to attach anything to it.
Wow, so we're building bridges just for walkers and bikers
Yes, sir.
and not cars. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I want to make sure that tonight I'm voicing my opposition to this process. I think, as Senator Hollins used to say, we got the cart in front of the ox on several different issues here. In my constituency, there's no middle ground. They love it or they hate it. But even the most ardent of people who don't like this concept see that the bridge going over from West Ashley towards the right, skirting Baker Hospital, which will be a county park down the line, tying into BRT, tying into the low line. There's some good stuff there about connectivity. There's some real good stuff there. And even the people I talk to, their first reaction is, we don't want that, we don't want that. When I talk about that, they go, yeah, I could see that. What they don't like is the little button hook that goes to Harvey Street. And that's the part that's given me a lot of heartburn. I think that's somebody's pet project that I haven't figured it out yet, but
Goes to the bend.
that goes to the bend, and there's no parking on the West Ashley side, so nobody's parking and riding their bike over anyway. So the piece that goes off to the right towards downtown, I like that. I like that a lot. You could literally take that from the North Bridge, BRT low line, the new Ash River Bridge coming across from California Dreamin' onto the West Ashley Greenway and go all the way to Main Road. That's connectivity. I can get with something like that. But again, the part that goes the other way is my problem. But again, I want to make sure that my objection here tonight is not to this concept. It's that we're slamming the door on public comment, and I can't be a part of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anybody else?
One more thing. I did have something for the attorney on the legality of an entity planning to submit a federal grant application must afford a reasonable opportunity to have public comment before the application is submitted. I'd like to share some information with you after the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Thigpen then. So if we're asking for this grant money and we don't get it, then what happens to the project?
The project would be delayed, and council would have to decide if it's worthwhile to try to pursue.
So if we don't have no money for it, we can't move forward with it.
Yes, ma'am. If the county elects to move forward with a possible third sales tax, then it could obviously be a project that would be listed as possible for possible funding.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? And this will come back to us on Tuesday. And if staff find out some additional information, then you have a chance to vote it down. But it's just moving it to full council on Tuesday. All in favor of Mr. Middleton's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. 3 nays and 5 ayes. Ms. Honeycutt had to leave. Okay. Item 3B.
For approval, the remainder of the consent agenda items, Mr. Chairman.
I want to ask some questions about 3B.
3B, all right.
Yeah, I want to ask some
Move for
questions.
approval 3B.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. The question I have on 3B is, just, I see we got HDR, ICE, and Michael Baker. Didn't we have some problem with HDR over at the landfill with doing some environmental work for us? So, how did they get on this list, or how did this interview process go when we've had multiple problems with this company, but they seem to keep appearing on this list as being one of the top consultants? Can somebody answer that for me? Because it appears to me if we have problems, we shouldn't be using the same company over and over if it's costing us money.
Excuse me, I'm getting over a sinus infection. One of the issues that we do have, Chairman Pryor, when our folks sit down and review these proposals, a lot of times they do not have the information in front of them to say that this firm has been in bad behavior with the County of Charleston, and it affects a person's vote or scoring as they're going through. One of the things myself and Ms. Altenheim and Mr. Tootin are doing, and also the county attorney, Ms. Ham, we are telling the departments, if a firm has done something to the county where they did not complete the work, where the work is unsatisfactory, the procurement office needs to know so that the firm can be written up and the file would be flagged to state that there is an issue with the firm. A number of times we do not find out until after the fact or years later that this firm did not perform to the level of expectancy to the letter of the land of the contract that was signed.
Did anybody consult KCI to be a part of this process? That's our environmental management guy, and they're doing work. Did anybody consult them for their opinion to see what they thought about this?
I do not believe so, sir, no.
Mr. Chairman.
I mean, how, how fast do we need to do this? Is this something we can send back, and give staff the correct information before, we bring these? Because I really don't want to, and I'm not trying to bad mouth anybody's business, but if you failed out on several occasions, you're being rewarded for bad behavior, and it's not fair to those folks out there that are doing the right thing, and then they see your name keep popping up over and over and over. So is this something that needs to be done tonight, or is this something we can send back to get it right?
I would defer to the department who is, if they need to move forward quickly with this, or if the department wants to, we can put it on hold and we can bring it back after we take a second look at it. It could be deferred.
I want to withdraw my second.
I see, I got you, I'm waiting on an answer.
Mr. Chairman, this is a completely different discipline than environmental management's discipline. This is for construction, engineering, inspection in the transportation development world, and it would behoove us to go ahead and move forward with this.
But it's still the same company. It's just a different division, right?
Completely, yes, sir.
I won't support it. If the rest of the council wants to support it, they can support it, but I'm not going to support it. Ms. Johnson?
Yes, sir. I do recall now that we had some problems with the Environmental Management Center, and I would like to withdraw my second. Mr. Moody?
Okay, is there another second for Mr. Moody to move this forward? Okay, there's no second, then the motion dies for lack of second. Okay, and so staff, y'all can work it out as fast as you can and get it back to us. So if we got to call a special meeting or whatever, we'll do that. But who do we have on staff? Who do we have on call now to do this work?
Mr. Pryor, I think we're in the last year of these services from a previous.
Yeah, but I mean, who can we extend that until we get this? Can we ask them to extend it until we do it? Who are we using now?
I think it's ICE. I believe it has the contract currently.
Is there some way we can extend this and for another year or 6 months?
Yes, sir.
Until this stuff can be put back out and done properly?
Yes, we can extend the contract.
Y'all can work that out, and that way y'all can have the consultant to do this, because ICE is already on this anyway. Are y'all satisfied with their work?
Yes, sir.
Then y'all can work that out and bring it back to council. Okay. Item 3C. What's the pleasure? Is there a motion for Milestone Master Agreement Extension? Y'all need time to read up on it.
Well,
What is this about? Can somebody explain to us what this is about, so Maybe Councilor know, what is this about?
Bill Tunick is here. I don't remember. Bill Tunick is here.
That's a 5-year agreement. This is a company that looks at the various lands that the county has, and they put up various antenna sites for communication, and we get a percentage of the proceeds from the carriers that are attached on those antennas.
And this is just an extension of that contract?
Yes, sir. This is extended.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Reverend Middleton. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. Item 3D is Steamboat Landing, bulkhead replacement project. What is the pleasure? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Johnson and Wehrman. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item 4 is economic development, financial incentives for urban electric.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Sass. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. And we move to the final item on the agenda is 6A.
What happened to 5A?
Oh, I'm sorry, 5A. I'm ahead of myself. A move for approval by Ms. Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Reverend Middleton. Any discussion?
Okay.
Mr. Sass and then Mr. Swears.
Mr. Chairman, I was reading about this. $4 million to build this station, and about a million of it is for sustainability items. Could somebody explain those a little bit to me? I'd like to hear about that.
Mr. Smalls, you got somebody that's going to explain that?
Yes, sir. And it's not exactly a million. It's about 400,000.
Pardon me?
400,000.
Oh,
for
okay.
Sustainability. And we decided to add that initiative just to meet the county's desires with sustainability. But it'll address site planning, water conservation, energy efficiency, recoverable power, and sustainable materials.
And,
So,
okay. And that's going to be at the same location where the present one is?
yes, sir. We'll demolish that house, which is basically the operating out of a house now.
Thing's in terrible shape. I understand that. It just seems like an awful lot of money.
Well, the original proposal was at 2.759 back in April of '21. And because of the increase in materials and also a little bit of addition for sustainment,
Okay.
brought it up that much.
Is there any provision for county police to be there as well?
Yes, we're addressing that. I think next week we're going to meet, but there's plenty of space inside for even some, we talked to Ms. Johnson about some.
Just going to talk about that.
Right, about some community space. And then also there's plenty of room on the inside for police to use that space as well for whatever their needs are.
Well, that's much better.
Yeah, there's sleeping areas, there's kitchen areas, bathrooms, so it really served all our first responders on Edisto well.
Very quickly, I would like to
Hold,
applaud.
I got to go to Mr. Swears. He was next.
I'm sorry.
If you finish with the Sass, I'll go to Ms. Swears, Ms. Johnson, then Reverend Middleton.
So this is to approve basically a cost overrun, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's going from, you said, what, 2.25 to 3 something, right?
4.2, so it's about 1.3.
That's a huge increase. That's not just sustainability. That was just the economics of building right now?
Yes. This is a 30% design status right now, and not the contract, but the designer came back with the current working estimate of what you see, the 4.2, and it's economic forces, as you said.
You know, I totally agree that what we had there was pretty deplorable, no question. But I do question, and I said the same thing about the Allendale Fire Station. I do question how we get these prices so high. I mean, we build grand buildings, and I realize we have our pride on the line there, but you know, a private residential builder, building my home or building somebody else's home in the vicinity, let's say, of this structure, they wouldn't dream of building something that nice. And I think sometimes we get a little carried away and we build structures that are far, far beyond what we really need.
You done, Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to comment on the fact that in this facility, we would have space enough for one or two officers to be able to use one of the rooms in the building for this EMS station. And I understand that the sheriff was just planning to go to a meeting on Friday to talk about the community is asking for a whole brand-new building for the sheriff office. So to me, this would really be a steal for us to be able to have this EMS station with enough space to house one or two sheriff officers there, because there's no station on the island now at all.
Johnson? Okay, let me go to Reverend Middleton.
Yeah, very quickly, I just wanted to applaud the sustainability inclusion, because I do feel that long-term, moving forward, that needs to be on all of our minds, specifically reducing our carbon footprint and just making certain that we're always employing or using those types of materials that will not pollute our environment. So I appreciate that, and I think that as we contemplate future buildings, that the sustainability component should be included.
Okay. Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree somewhat, Reverend Middleton, but 750,000 is a lot of sustainability.
400,000.
It says the cost would be 3.5 million if it were not doing sustainability, unless I'm reading this wrong, and we're going to 4.2. That's 700.
You just said 400.
Did you just say 400,000?
400.
It looks like 700,000 is the sustainability boost.
Sorry about that.
So I agree, but that's an expensive boost.
It wasn't a million, so
No, I'm sorry, that was my mistake.
I think we can get more sustainable cheaper. But anyway, I'm okay with this. My question, Mr. Smalls, is we're reprogramming from the Azalea Complex project. What does that mean we don't do at Azalea?
Oh, that's the, basically, we're getting money from the third phase of the Azalea Complex. And we have, the second phase is the bulk of the construction. So the third phase doesn't happen until a couple of years after.
Remind me what the third phase is.
Third phase is the EMS and the work area, as well as training, and then the board of voter registration. That's the third phase.
Okay.
First phase is all the admin buildings and the workshop for public works, as well as.
We're going to have to find some cash and sustainable cash for this thing in a year or two.
And as far as sustainability, that's a standard now by the administrator that we're putting in all our new buildings. So you'll see that coming through on all new buildings.
It's a great thing.
And also, you must remember too, you got new building codes that comes up on a yearly basis as well. And then we want to make sure these things are hurricane proof too. So that way, if a hurricane comes and we got employees, they're protected. And so we keep thinking we want to build for right now, but we want to build for the future, because when you build for right now and you got to come back in the future to do additions, it costs you, twice as much. And so the old adage, you can pay me now or pay me later, whichever one you want to do. But I applaud staff and Mr. Tootin for moving in the right direction and finding the funding to do this, because the longer you wait, yes, he said 2021, you see how the cost has gone up since 2021. You wait till 2023, it may double. So thank y'all. So all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. Item 6A is a new tax system appropriation of funds request to consider. A second.
I'll second.
Second. Now, discussion. Okay? There's yeah, somebody needs to tell why.
I support this, but I would like, this is a lot of money, so I'd like Ms. Tinkler to kind of
You
give us
go
a
step up to the mic over there, Ms. Tinkler.
high-level view of what, you know, the connectivity that this is going to help with our different departments. I think the public needs to hear that. Thank you, Ms. Tinkler. I'm sorry. That's your maiden name.
Yeah, we had a little presentation for you.
You get to Mr. Moody's real point, when you're winning, you don't delay.
No, it is going to be a thrilling conversation talking about a tax system here. Okay, so we'll go through all of this. You kind of know how this works. Weaknesses in the current system. So right now we've had, well, kind of going back, current system. We implemented this, it went live in August of 2011. So we've had this now for 10 years. We kind of knew that there was always going to be a plan to revisit our tax system, reviewing it in a 10-year phase. We were hopeful, of course, that we would be able to stick with the same company. They, however, were purchased by a competitor in November of 2019, and that has become the primary issue here, that we were, asking for funds to revisit and go through an RFP process. So we are having a difficult time with slow response from support. Expectations that support will end because they have been purchased by a competitor. This company has been slow to adapt to any one of our changes in laws, procedures, and any one of the 4 offices that is impacted by this tax system. We're constantly having to find workarounds to create in-house for the way that the tax system currently does not work. They manage and build our online bill presentment side. So what the taxpayer will see, how the taxpayer finds their bill, makes a bill payment, that is what they manage. And there have been constant problems that we're just not able to adjust. And so we're looking at this as a way to ease the burden of a taxpayer and make it easier for them to find their tax bill and make their tax payment, but also on the back end, of course, we need to make sure that we can properly value property, real property, value motor vehicles, value watercraft, calculate millage, collect, run a tax sale. So these are all important things. And so why now? I mean, we are looking at 15 years after we did our initial RFP for this current tax system, we see advancements in cloud-based solutions, third-party application integration, and as well, we can anticipate that we have a lot of institutional memory that is retiring in the next months, literally, and in the next years. And so we want to ensure that they are part of this process as well. They were part of the process in the initial RFP and implementation for Aumentum, which is our current system. And we want to make sure that they have input in that as well. So I planned for a little bit more of presentation, but basically that's it. I mean, we have a system that is a bit antiquated and outdated and is quickly becoming obsolete because of the service that we are not receiving from our current provider.
Okay, and I just want to say thank you for taking the lead and trying to make this happen, because if anybody was there when Manatron was instituted, they know the problems and the trouble that we went through. And every so often you have to upgrade your equipment. And I think this is a foresight and vision. And I just hope that when we do get something, we get something that's already shelf ready. And it won't cost us all this, preparation time or training time, because I think the last time, they kind of told us they was going to build something specifically for us, and it wasn't shelf ready. So when I spoke to you on the phone, on that other conversation, that's one of the things I told you. I want something that's shelf ready, it's already been proven and working, and and from a company that we basically know is going to be around for a while.
And
Yeah,
that, I
but
mean,
you don't
that-
know how that's gonna happen with the company.
Right, well, that's our hope. I mean, of course, our hope was that Aumentum would be around for longer than Manatron, GRM, Aumentum. It's
Right.
been a variety of
Right.
things over the years. But yes, when they were purchased by in this last go-around by a competitor, it was pretty clear that their support staff was going away.
Yeah, but I just don't want it to be built for Charleston County. I want something that we know that works. Okay, Mr. Swayze.
I do think it's worth including in the spec that it be proven technology, that it not be something that was created 6 months ago or a year ago. I mean, we don't have a vendor yet, right? We still
No.
need to put it out for bid.
Correct.
So
I mean,
I
this
would
is
suggest
what
we
we're
would-
asking is that, yes, we're able to set aside some money so that we can go out for an RFP process.
Yeah, again, I would suggest we don't allow folks brand new to the game to even bid. Ms. Altenheim, back to the money game. How do we afford this?
My recommendation is that we take this out of the ARPA lost revenue pot. When county council approved the priorities for the ARPA money, one of the priorities was making the county whole. That part was related to the lost revenue side. The tax system, I think, fits very well into that definition, as it is a system that's antiquated, needs to be replaced. It is a system that provides revenues to all of the taxing entities within the county. So it's important to Charleston County, but it's also important to all of our taxing entities. And it also provides services to all of the taxpayers within the county. So it makes sense to take it from that pot of revenue.
And we know we can do that?
We can do that, yes.
Johnson?
I was wondering, why couldn't we take this out of the fund balance?
Undesignated fund balance.
If council wanted to take this out of fund balance rather than using the lost revenues, that could happen. In order to move forward in this fiscal year, we would have to amend the budget ordinance. That would require 3 readings of an ordinance to get the funding into the budget. It is very important that we get this RFP on the street as quickly as we can. Typically, we don't put an RFP on the street unless we have funding identified and approved for the project. And so that could delay when we can get the RFP out. With the cycle in the tax world, this will work. It'll allow the proposals to allow the companies to set adequate time to submit the proposals, prepare and submit, allow the tax group adequate time to review the proposals, and then bring companies in to do demonstrations before we hit the heavy part of the tax season. And that's why we've carried this in at this point in time.
Well, I have to say, Madam Treasurer, you know, when you told me about this, might be running into about $5 million or somewhere around there. I thought it was a lot of money and was a little hesitant about that. But you see, I thought about this a little bit more, thinking that we needed to upgrade our system and whatnot. And we also don't want to run into the problem of having antiquated technologies and running the same kind of problems as ROD's office with poor, antiquated equipment. Now, but taking the money out of the opera, that really concerns me. And so you're thinking that if we went to fund balance, it was going to take too long for us to be able to take care of this problem for the purchase?
If council could do an appropriation from the ARPA revenues next Tuesday at your meeting, you could finalize it, we would have the funding set, and we could go ahead and put the RFP out. If you're going to do amendment to the budget from fund balance, that will take 3 readings of an ordinance to get that completed.
And how many days is that, Christian? 30 days?
We could have third reading by March 24th
Right.
if we are able to give an ordinance first reading on Tuesday.
March 24th.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So,
well-
Ms. Tinkler, does that give you enough time, March 24th, to do what you need to do?
Well, I mean, I would also want to defer to the other three offices that are affected by this tax system. So I don't know if any of the representatives from those offices.
I mean, but
would say-
what I'm saying is y'all gonna put out an RFP.
Correct. And the RFP, to my knowledge, is about ready to go. So, I mean, we're ready. We have written it, we have built it with our requirements. And so it is ready whenever we have funding hopefully available.
The question I'm asking is the 24th going to be too late? You know, I understand, is it going to put y'all too far behind to wait until the 24th before you put the RFP out? Because had we known y'all were doing this earlier, we could have already started the process.
Absolutely.
But I didn't learn about this until last week.
You are absolutely right. And that is, though, why I want to defer, because I'm not the only office that is affected by this. So if we were to do a month later, is that reasonable? Given that we have about a month to 2 months.
23 days later.
Yeah.
Because Tuesday is the 1st.
I'm sorry? Okay. They said that's fine.
Well, I would appreciate that because I'm just thinking also, you know, we just talked about the broadband, during the roundtable discussion, trying to get funding for that. And if the more money we keep taking out of ARPA, it just kind of really concerns me. If we don't have to do that. If there's some other way for us to get the money somewhere else, I really would prefer that. So I appreciate you letting us know that we can do this in about 23 days, 24 days.
All right, so Mr. Moody and then Mr. Werman. Mr. Moody, 'cause Mr. Moody had something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to thank Ms. Tinkler first. She, of all officials, she always calls and talks about and talks through and asks for questions, and I appreciate that. We don't get a left hook coming at us, but I guess I would differ, Ms. Johnson. I mean, this council sets recommendations for that funding. The DCA of Finance just laid out the perfect reason why it's ready to go. We're going to jam our electeds up by setting this back a month. What are they going to say? Yeah, we can make it happen. But you've got a perfect funding source right here without having to reinvent the wheel. I think we ought to take staff recommendation and go with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Werman?
You know, I certainly, I understand the concern, and I think we might have even discussed this, Ms. Tinkler. I understand the concern about, you know, we sort of having these ARPA projects come up on a sort of one-off basis. We had, you know, obviously a wonderful process that, you know, I guess sort of validated some of the work we've done thus far, and I was appreciative that the sheets were included on that previous agenda item that, quite honestly, helped avoid that discussion, I think, on that one. You know, if it helps, you know, I'm fully open to an honest answer from our electeds. I have been convinced that, you know, due to the timing and if there is legitimately a problem here as far as timing, I would be fine taking this out of ARPA. You know, I would file away in the back of my mind the fact that we're doing this and the fact that, you know, we've sort of explained that I think the only real justification for not doing this out of the general fund, you know, excess is this timing issue. So I'm happy to, you know, put a pin in that in my little head here and let this move forward on ARPA if it's really going to affect things. Now, if it's not really going to affect things, you know, that's another story. But if our electeds, you know, feel free to tell me, because if you really think that the 3 weeks is going to affect things, I'm ready to go on this. So.
Again, okay, so just Mr. Tolbert, for example, when you put out an RFP, how many months do you typically have that RFP out and available to the public?
Because this is going to be a very large piece that's going to replace something, a system in place, we would typically put this out for about 6 weeks. That way it gives the firms enough time to put together a very good proposal, because it is a very loaded proposal. The RFP is ready. If tonight you vote to fund it, that's good with me, and Corinne Altenheim and I tomorrow can work with Ms. Tinkler, and while you are working the financial piece that you know you're going to approve it, we could release the RFP by Monday morning. So that way, the RFP is out, firms are looking at it, you all work out the financial piece. If you know you're going to approve it, I can work Ms. Altenheim tomorrow and also Ms. Tinkler, and we can get that RFP released while that part is being closed out. Even though she doesn't have the full funding for it, you're already approving that you are going to put the funding there. So there's a way that we can do that. We generally don't do it in procurement, but looking at it and looking at the expediency of it and the critical situation that they all are in with this particular system, because our concern is if that system goes down, we do not have anyone who can come in here and fix it. That is a critical situation that we are at this point, because the current firm does not provide any service to it really anymore.
Mr. Werman.
Well, so if a sort of preliminary approval can work, then I think I do have to ask the question is why couldn't a preliminary approval on an allocation out of the general fund work? I mean, you know, obviously that process, that longer process would last longer, but if we're saying we can get an RFP out without having a vote from council on this, you know, ARPA approval, could we not get an RFP out on the same basis without having a first reading? I mean, I'm not seeing how that through line sort of applies in both scenarios.
Let her answer, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Swales, and then you, Mr. Sass. So who are you asking that to, Corinne?
To whomever knows the answer.
Yeah, please, thank you. I think that I need to add a little bit of explanation to how the ARPA funds are split. It's been about a year since we've talked about it, so there's two parts of it. The lost revenue part is a calculation that we did. It's federal requirement, and it allowed us to recover about $30 million in funding for revenue changes that we had during the time of COVID. Council has appropriated $15 million of that money already. We did that last summer. The remaining $15 million is still sitting out there, and it would have been our intention to bring something to council comprehensive for that final $15 million. However, this popped up. That $15 million, that lost revenue portion is the portion that county councils indicated that they wanted to use to make the county whole. Now, there's a second part of the lost revenues, that's $50 million. And that's the area where we're looking at doing things like broadband, where we're looking to help small businesses, where we've got some consultants in right now helping us to identify areas and processes that we will go through in dispersing that money. So it's essentially two sort of different pots of money, although it's all coming from ARPA.
So there's a $50 million pot and a $15 million pot?
There is a $30 million pot that's lost revenues. We have appropriated 15 million of that already. So there's a second 15 million. That'll be our last pot of lost revenues. On the other hand, on the other side of it, there's $50 million that Ms. Durant and others are working on to be used for items such as, there's a large possibility of items that can be used for water and sewer, broadband, small business assistance. There are many, many items that money can be used for. So a year ago when we presented this, the idea was that we use part of the money for county needs. And that's why I'm recommending the lost revenue for the tax system, because that is definitely a county need.
Mr. Swears.
So Ms. Altenheim, ARPA funds have at least some restrictions on them.
ARPA funds
They have some guidelines.
Oops, sorry. ARPA funds do have some restrictions on them. It's lesser so on the lost revenue side. There are some restrictions, and we're not recommending that you use it for any of those items.
But this fits.
Yes.
This would work as ARPA funds.
Okay,
We know that.
This pot of money. The other pot of money has many, many more restrictions on it.
And on fund balance, there aren't any real restrictions on fund balance. We can, other than we use it for typically one-time items.
Correct. Now, just to clarify, the lost revenue, there is not a restriction that would prevent us from using it for the tax system. The restrictions there are to put it in a reserve, to do a lawsuit settlement, or to fund a pension liability. That's all that we have
But
restriction-wise.
if I'm looking at two sources of money, I'm gonna spend the one that has some restrictions first and clear that. And then the one that really I can do whatever I want with, I'm gonna hang on to it. So I think we should stick with the staff recommendation here.
Okay, Mr. Sass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Schweers. I think that it's the ARPA lost money. This is a system that is going to benefit every municipality in the county, not just Charleston County, but we collect taxes for Hollywood, we collect taxes for Mount Pleasant, we collect taxes for everybody. And so, and I think it's a county-wide system that all these different, besides just our auditor and treasurer and assessor and our regular people that are Charleston County, these other entities use that system a lot. And I think the general public will be looking at that system too. It'll be a new system that works. It's a heck of a lot better than the one we got now. The one we got now is really bad. I mean, we all agree with that. The one we got now needs to go. And we don't have a lot of time between now and next September. You know, we don't have a lot of time. We need to get going on this thing.
Okay, Ms. Johnson and then Mr. Worm.
Okay. So, back to Ms. Altenheim. I think the way you explain this to me makes a little bit more sense. I can kind of change my tone on this some, because you were saying that we already put this 30 million aside. 15 million was already designated, and 15 million is still out there. So we got to do something with that anyway. And so, since we don't have anything else that we know of that we're going to use that 15 million for, why not take 5 million or whatever out of this 15 million that's undesignated?
That's correct. There is one item that we talked about a year ago that we were going to use the second tranche, and that was for another one-time COLA for county employees. If you could recall, we did that with the first 15 million, and the proposal was at that time that we would come in and do a second one-time COLA. The cost for that would be estimated about $4 million.
Okay.
So at 9 million, we would still have approximately $6 million left in that lost revenue pot.
All right, game over. I'm sold.
Mr.
Chairman.
When you say the 50 million, you're expecting the 40 million to come this year sometime in April or May, right? And so out of that 40, 15 would go to lost revenue. And then when you say we'll have $50 million left, so you're anticipating that the 40 plus the 10 that's going to be left after you spend the 5 will be the 50 million, because you said we're going to have $50 million. So we're only getting 40 million because it was 80 million, right?
The federal government is distributing these funds to the taxing entities in 2 tranches. So we received some money last April or May,
Right.
the first half of the funds, and we're expecting that we will receive the second half.
Right, but the first half
probably,
is how much?
40 million. So we got 40 million first time, 40 million second time.
Second time.
Yes.
So when you say we have 50, okay, so if you're going to take 15 out of the 40, to match the 15 that we did the first time, that only leaves 35, that only leaves 25.
We received $40 million in the first tranche, and all we spent out of there so far is approximately the 15 million
Right,
has been
so we
appropriated.
got 25 more.
Yes, we have funding from both pots.
Now now that's how I come to 50. I just want to make sure my math was correct. Reverend Middleton?
And as we're doing math on this side of the bench, or whatever dais, whatever we would like to call this, and we say we have nothing else to do with $9 million or how many ever millions are available, I would like to re-enter the affordable housing, or the housing, I know we don't want to call it affordable anymore, but whatever the case is, a set-aside amount out of those funds, for housing initiatives. And so, as we are just finding money, all over the place from every pot to include the general fund contemplated here tonight, I really still would just put it on the table that we still need funds appropriated in that area.
Okay, Mr. Wellman.
Yeah, no, and Reverend Middleton, I know where you're going with that, and I understand, and that's generally my concern. Other folks have stated, talked about stormwater and various other things, water, sewer. I think that is why we did say, and I think I heard Ms. Altenheim say this, that ideally, yes, we do want to do a more sort of broad-based approach to how we would use at least the 15 million of lost revenue that I guess we've designated from next year. I understand that's kind of why I was saying I would put a pin in my head about this, but nevertheless, if we're presented with this, that's why I'm willing to support it, because it does sound like we have some flexibility in various options, and it does, I do want to err on the side of caution when it comes to our tax system, so.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we all do. So there's a motion on the floor, and it's already been duly seconded, right, Ms. Salisbury?
Yes, sir.
To use the money out of ARPA to fund this, okay, without any. Lost revenue side, right. Okay, so all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Anything else to come before this body before we adjourn? Hearing none, meeting adjourned.